Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Over the winter, I'd like to do some modifications and some maintenance on the Chevelle. One of those being is send the clutch off to McLeod and have them put in a different pressure plate. I have the RXT 1200, and obviously I don't have anywhere close to 1200 horsepower, so I can get away with a lighter pressure plate, and hopefully that means less pedal effort, because if you've been following the channel, you'll know my clutch pedal is extremely stiff, and I'm kind of tired of it. So we're going to pull that out, which means pulling the transmission, the clutch, and the flywheel. So we're going to jack the Chevelle up and get to work. So I noticed a couple of things. First, that is transmission fluid. Why am I leaking transmission fluid out of the front of the transmission? That's a weird spot. So it makes me wonder if internally here, like at the where the release bearing is, if there's a leak there. So check that out. And also, back here, my vent, I think when I was banging around with my exhaust, I broke it off. So gotta change that. That's not a big deal though. So the way I designed this is I pull these caps and now I have access to those two bolts that are very hard to get to. So that makes life a lot easier. So you can see the clutch, nothing looks damaged or anything. I imagine that's normal wear there, clutch dust, all that kind of stuff, but you can see there is some oil, you know, splattered around, which I would say is from the rear main seal. Hopefully it didn't get on the clutch disc itself, but I never noticed any real slipping. But we'll take it apart and, you know, examine it. The next order of business is taking off the flywheel. I remember when I put this on, it was like a press-on fit. I had to pull it in with the flywheel bolts, so I imagine taking it off is going to be a nightmare. I'm actually thinking I might have to build a puller tool so I can pull it off, but I'm hoping I don't have to. So I'm not going to film this because I'm sure removing this is going to be a long, frustrating time, so I'll get back to you once this is off. So we got the flywheel out, which thankfully wasn't too hard using a couple of pry bars. But we can now take a look at the entire assembly, which I cleaned up just to make it a little easier. Now, starting with the clutch, part number 6921-07. It is a McLeod RXT 1200, and yeah, I don't have 1200 horsepower or anywhere close to it, but I went with the twin disc ceramic because I wanted a little more resistance to heat. And yeah, I do road racing and stuff like that, and I also knew I'd be slipping the clutch a little, so I needed that, yeah, I guess resilience in it. The pressure plate looks pretty good. You can see the little bit of wear marks right there on the fingers where it touches the release bearing, and that seems normal. All the fingers, none of them look bent. There's no high spots, so I don't see any damage there, which is good. We have our inside plate right here. As for hot spots, this actually doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good to me. We have our top clutch, and then we have our second plate, which a little more hot spots maybe on the outer edge, but look at this. You can see this inner edge right here doesn't get the same kind of pressure as the outer edge, and that is, you know, seen on the clutch, the pucks as well. So you can see how it wears not so much here, but a lot more in there. And I thought that was interesting. So we'll pull that off. And then we have the inside of our mid plate, which you can see maybe a little more hot spots in here. I don't know how this compares to some of the good, how good or bad it is. But again, not a whole lot of contact or not as much pressure here as it is on here. And same thing with our pucks there. That's our second disc. And then we have our flywheel, which is also a McLeod. And so, I don't know. I've seen much worse wear patterns than this. I'm sure there's better ones, but take a look at this. I don't know if those are stress fractures or what, but it's also found on the clutch assembly, and it's all the way around. So I don't know if those are fractures because it's not found anywhere on the surface where the clutch engages. So maybe it's just debris spitting out and just kind of gouging the metal a little. Hard to say. I might have to talk to McLeod a little bit, but let me know what you guys think. Is this good, bad, ugly? Leave a comment. I always like to hear it. The T56 Magnum transmission looks good from the outside. It's actually surprisingly clean. I can finally get rid of this temporary vent tube since I burned up the original while welding on the transmission tunnel. And make sure you have a working vent because there's actually quite a bit of crankcase pressure that happens inside of these. And if you don't have a working vent, expect leaks. I was getting leaks out of my speedometer gear, and once I installed this vent tube, that fixed it all up. The throw-up bearing, I have a Tilton, which is top-notch. I like that it screws on rather than using spacers and all that stuff. The bearing, I mean, you can see the bearing surface where it touches the, you know, pressure plate fingers. You know, spins freely. Sounds like there's, you know, sounds like a bearing that's been in use for a while, which I guess is normal, but I think that's okay. I did notice a little bit of resistance, I guess you could call it, when pushing in and out of this, you know, bearing here. And I don't know if that's normal or not, but there just feels like there's a little bit of a snag in there, and I don't know if that's the cause of my clutch pedal issues or not. I have no idea. Keep in mind, there's no pressure in here. There's really not much fluid at all either. And I don't know if I'm even pushing on this throw-up bearing completely perfect. I'm sure I'm not. So I'm not sure, but I don't know. Maybe there's something going on there. You can also see down here, there's some fluid. And that doesn't look like transmission fluid, but That right there has a pink hue to it, which suggests ATF, which is what I use for transmission fluid. And I don't know where that's coming from because, you know, I don't see any source to it. I wonder if there's a hairline fracture somewhere, which would be disastrous, but I'll clean it up and take a look. So I cleaned it all up, and I don't see any cracks, which is a good thing. So my best guess is maybe it's coming out of this collar right here, if it's coming out of anywhere inside the bell housing at all. I'm not too sure. Maybe I'll pull this off and take a look later, but for now, I'll just leave it and I'll investigate that later. I called Tilton and explained what the release bearing was doing, that there's a bit of a snag when I push it in, and everything that I told them, they said it sounded normal, and I'll have to take their word on it. There is no gouging or anything on the piston exterior or even on the interior, so I guess that is a positive sign. But what do you guys think? You know, is this normal? I also talked to McLeod and sent them some pictures of the clutch and flywheel, and they did say that these markings are unusual and it's something they haven't seen before, and they recommend that I send this down and they can take a look at it, which is what I was going to do anyways. So I'm going to box this up and let them take a look at it, work on it, and make sure everything is right, and also change the pressure plate. And I'm also waiting on a green light from somebody because there's one more thing that I'd like to work on this winter.